Who knows what this is?
Oh, SQL.
SQL. Looks like PHP using SQL.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so new file, save as event listener .html. Let's quickly recreate our HTML so we don't spend too much time here on this. All right. All right. Include the CSS. Chapter 6. This will be the form like last time. Form. Insert a label or username. Text. His username. So you don't in this case because I was just trying to do this quickly. We use the post and the action to actually submit the form, which is not part of the what we're doing here. That's why I skipped it. Yeah, let's add this so we can maybe pick up some CSS. So let's add a div with the ID of page. Again, it's not going to affect what we're doing, but it will make the page look nicer. And then we hit here a div with the ID of feedback. And then you can copy the line 8, 9, and 10 rather. And then just change the username to password in the label and in the ID, and also the input type here is password. Do you know what is the difference between text and password? It's going to show little dots instead of the text. And finally, input type equals submit, and value equals sign up. Oh yeah. Okay, so that's this is password. Okay, so you remember how last time we created this method that was checking the size of the username and then giving an error? We're going to do the same, but this time we're going to do it with the use of the event listener instead of the DOM event handler. So before the closing body, let's go ahead and add our script here. Yeah, if you guys want to put it external, you can. So do you want to just put it external? It's the same thing. It's just a matter of where
Just
the
put it in there. If
JavaScript.
it's not that big.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking we can just put it here. All right, so now we're going to create our function. So this function is called check username. And then when you have your bill calculator, you're going to have a function calculate bill. Right? And so variable real message is going to equal to document dot get element by ID of feedback. If this dot value dot length less than 5, real message dot text content is going to equal to username must be 5 characters or more. Else, your message dot text content is going to be an empty string. Now variable el username is going to equal to document dot get element by ID of the username. So that's the field with the ID of username. And el username dot, so here is the new part that we haven't done, add event listener. And note here, when we open the parent, it's going to tell us the type of arguments we need to give to the event listener, add event listener method. And we have a string type, the function, and the capture, the Boolean capture. So the type of the event is going to be, in this case, blur. So blur. Now remember that with the DOM event handler we were using on blur, but with the add event listener it's just blur, not on blur. And then the second argument is going to be the name of the function, which is
Check username.
okay, check username. And then the last optional parameter argument is going to be the event capture, whether it is
Sorry to interrupt.
And the false is going to be whether the event capture is bubbles up or comes down from more generic to more specific. And we're not really concerned about it. So right now we have everything we need to test out our program. And so if you remove the focus from the field, as you can see, and then you click outside of the field, then we get the username must be 5 characters or more. And otherwise, we should not be getting this error message. Our form doesn't submit or do anything else useful, but this is the example that we have here. So this is handling a blur event with the event listener, add event listener method.
two questions. So can you explain again on the function where it says this dot value dot length? This, what is that referring
Sure.
to?
So this in the programming in JavaScript and in other languages refers to the current object. So JavaScript is, there are many different objects inside the program. So you might be working with a window object, document object, and this refers to the current object that you're in. So when we call our function here, when we're checking the value of the username, then this is going to be the current object. So it's referring to the EL username, right? And then the value of this field is what is the value, and then the length is how many characters are there, because this is a string, so it can use the length property.
So just so I understand, so you didn't declare a username until down below, or where did you declare it?
Yeah, so I didn't declare it right here. Yeah, so I did declare it.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's declared down here, and it contains a reference to the username HTML element.
The second question I have is about blur. Okay, so you put blur in, like it's a string, but it's considered a what do you call it, an argument, part of the argument?
It is an argument, is the first argument to the method.
How could it be a string? Blur is an event.
Well, it is an event, but the event blur. So the events are passed to the add event listener as strings, and then add event listener knows that this is a event. So it's expecting an event, and then it's asking us to put it in as a string. Let's take a look real quick at the add event listener documentation. So add event listener method attaches an event handler to the document. And it has three parameters here. The first parameter is the event, which is required. And the documentation tells us it's a string that specifies the name of the event. So that's just the way the method was implemented.
So could be click or on click.
Correct. Not on click, click. So that's the thing, is that we no longer use the on to prefix them. But it could be any event, right? Okay. Do you have is it working for everyone now? Question? Not working or question? Okay. Okay, so are you concerned about the view or that's the CSS? You don't have the view. Oh, yeah, okay. So you're fine, the JavaScript is working. Because she already didn't put the page, the div page since I forgot to put. So, right inside the form needs to go in the div in the idea page. I had forgotten to put this and then someone reminded me. So you need to add this one right here, Veronica. Okay. So Veronica, this is what you're missing. All right. So let's do one more. The last one, which is going to be, as we can see here, we can't actually pass parameters to our function. Our custom function does not, and this is important, right? So because of the limitation of JavaScript, the function, when we call it, we don't use the parents. We can't pass any arguments. So these are functions that cannot take in any arguments. So what do we do if we want to pass arguments to our function? Well, we're going to learn how to do this now, which is to essentially wrap our function into what I told you last time. Does anyone remember? Anonymous function. So let's do the last example for the event handlers with JavaScript before we move on to jQuery, which is how to create an event listener with an anonymous function. Let me see if we can make this use some of our code here. Okay, so I think we can reuse the code, but why don't you save as so we can make some changes? Save as event listener with params. A new file. So the HTML should be the same. And for the JavaScript, it will be somewhat similar, but I would like us to just do it from scratch. So otherwise it will just get confusing if you don't understand what's going on. So please delete everything inside the script tags in the event listener with params.html. Okay, and then we're going to start afresh in the script. So we're going to have a variable el username is equal to document dot get element by ID of the username, and variable el message is equal to document dot get element by ID of the feedback, which is the div where the feedback will be displayed, the error message. All right, so now our custom function. Again, we have a function check username, but this time we want to make our function more flexible, and instead of always hard coding the value of the length of the username to 5, we want it to be variable. So we're going to pass an argument here called min length. Now remember, we're defining the function, so this is the template of the function, and that's why we're not passing an actual number, but just like a placeholder that we're saying here, this is where the length, the min length is going to go when we call the function, right? So that's the function declaration here. Maybe add a comment. Function declaration. All right. If el dot, so the same thing, username dot value dot length is less than the min length. So just to point out here that, as you can see, sorry, there is no dot here, however. This is the variable. So as I mentioned earlier, that this was referring to the username, right? So it's just the current object, and that's just another way of writing it. So if this is less than the min length, then el message dot inner HTML is going to equal to username must be plus min length plus characters or more. So now we're using inner HTML because we're actually concatenating text with a variable, so we don't have just text to use text content. Else, el message.innerHTML is going to equal to empty string. So now our add event listener function is going to look different because we have to pass this argument, and it's going to look like this: el username dot add event listener blur. And now we have to declare the anonymous function. So function. Okay.
If you ever close your function,
So here, yeah, I think I need one more. Thank you. You're my QA engineer. We need to close the function from up here, right? So the event listener goes after the custom function. In fact, it's calling it. But pay attention here to the anonymous function is going to have the parents, and then inside the open and close curly braces is where we're going to call our check username function, and here we can pass an argument. And we can call more than one function here if we needed to. So this entire thing, this entire statement from function to here is considered the first argument. And therefore, let me just make it more clear. So this is the first argument, and then we're going to say comma, and then the last argument is false again. So we have still three arguments separated by comma, except now the second argument looks like more complicated than before because we are wrapping our custom function inside an anonymous function. Let me try out this real quick and I'll let you finish. Okay, and so the difference now is that if we have here check username of 3 or whatever number is, then our program is going to be able to handle various lengths rather than just one. So it's become, as a result, more flexible. And this is what we accomplished with adding the anonymous function. So make sure this is working for everyone. And after it's working, I think we'll take the break because we are shifting topics altogether to jQuery. Do you have a question or anything not working? Okay, show me something else. So what is it? Did you put anything here? Okay, it's not here. And you don't have any console errors? Now we need to make this bigger so you can see the console. We haven't had it. Method property, no. So 935 is really errors. When you spell something, it sounds to me like double check the name, see everything if it matches. Check the name. Okay, make sure that the names match, and I think that's probably the problem. Okay, so we have covered actually two types, the DOM event handler and now the add event listener. There is more to the topic, but since that's a beginning class, I'll leave it here. There are also delegates, and also, as I mentioned, every event comes with its event object, which carries certain information like errors, and so you can take advantage of the event object as well, but I don't think we're going to do an example here. Any other questions? All right, so it's 5:25, so I'll see you in 10. So Sam, I'm going to email Lisa now.
Okay, great.
Are you available in the hours in the afternoon? I guess?
It's I'm looking for a different job at the moment, and so that might be fun.
But until we find one,
Yeah,
for example, a couple of weeks, we
Yeah,
need to see
absolutely.
something.
I can do that. I'll send you all I know.
I might have it already. Let's see. So, Did anyone call me?
Oh yeah, I did. I was just asking, like, so this code doesn't actually prevent people from submitting it, right?
No, that has nothing to do with that.
Does it just display the?
Yeah, so you want, yeah, so you could use this to prevent us from submitting as we did in the assignment before. So you can define it for this assignment itself. Now you can here. So, this is pretty much not doing anything right now. And you can set it up. So it's just a couple of different exercises, just skip. So did you email? Okay. All right, thanks for that.
No need to fear, he will. Guess who's here?
No.
Oh, good man. I'm busy, but you know something about bills don't stop. Some they still want their collection fees. Have to see your boy last night. Oh, really? That's what my friend calls me. He's like, I got this deposit. I was just like, sure. Dude, I tell you, it was so easy. Literally, what I had to do, it took us 45 minutes from the time I showed it to your ring. I was in traffic. I caught traffic as a quicker than I actually was in traffic. Oh, an hour and oh, yeah. You're very close.
Okay, I think it's time to start again. All right. So who has used jQuery before? Okay. Well, that's pretty much what we do. Call jQuery and use it. All right. So we're shifting gears now to jQuery. I think you'll be all happy about that. So there you go. So what is jQuery? Actually, jQuery is nothing more than JavaScript library. As you have experienced for yourselves, working with JavaScript can be a bit tedious and, it's not exactly easy. So some folks got together and decided to write a library with JavaScript that would make it easier to accomplish the same functionality, and also a library that is cross-browser compatible, so you don't have to be concerned with, how I showed you how IE8 has its own event handler name that differs, and so in any case, jQuery is cross-browser compatible, so that's another reason a lot of people like using it. It is written in JavaScript, so it is really helpful to know JavaScript before you start with jQuery. And the way jQuery works is very easy. You select elements, and then you do things with the elements that you selected, except the process is a lot easier than what we used with JavaScript. To select elements with jQuery, we use CSS style selectors. So this is going to be a little different and easier probably, but there are many of them. So for example, you can say jQuery list item.hot. So this CSS style selector that is going to select the list item with class hot, right? And so jQuery, this is the entire statement here, is a function, and this will be the selector. Now, forget about using the $sign as a variable name. Now that we use jQuery, the $sign is going to be a shorthand for the jQuery function. Okay? So we can write jQuery, but we're just writing $sign, and this is going to mean we're now selecting the jQuery. And you can mix jQuery and JavaScript, so sometimes you're going to, there are a few instances where it's easier actually to use JavaScript. So you might see some methods that are not prefaced with $sign, which means it's JavaScript. But those who are prefaced with $sign are going to be jQuery. Okay, so once you select the element, it's going to create a jQuery object. And then the object is going to contain references to the element. So it's the same thing as we have been doing with, for example, get element by ID. And jQuery is an object, so it has properties and methods that we can use to work with elements. And just like with JavaScript, we can get an individual selection or a match set. Right? And then we can do various things with the methods with the jQuery object. For example, if I wanted to hide this class, if I wanted to hide the list item with the class of hot, this is how I'll write this in jQuery. So $sign, select my element, and then the name of the method is .hide, and that's it. So some of the things you can do is select or find elements, update content, simplify event handling, which we just did in class here. And it is common that if you need to store a variable, if you need to store the object from a jQuery object in a variable, to distinguish those from JavaScript, the variable names are prefaced with $sign. Not to be confused with PHP $sign. So this is jQuery $sign. But it helps, it's not required, but it helps because, as I mentioned, you can mix JavaScript and jQuery, and this way you know that you're dealing with jQuery here. So there are different types of selectors you can use. For example, you can use an ID, just like with get element by ID, and here is what this would look like. It's just $sign, hashtag author is going to select the element with the ID of author. You can have a lot more complicated selectors as well. For example, here the first child of a UL, there is a list. This is how it's selected, and we're going to go back and review, not go back, but rather spend time reviewing the various selectors that are available to you. So let's do a few examples. We're going to do a lot of small examples for starters. Actually, before we get to that, I need to tell you how to get jQuery. So jQuery is a library, and so we have to actually put it in our program. And we do so by, there are two ways we can do it. We can download the library and then use it from our web in the same location as our other files, or we can use something called a CDN. which is a link. So because jQuery is very popular, for example, Google stores the library on its servers, and then you can just include it as a link. But you have to get jQuery and include it in your program in order to use it. So if your program is not working and you look at the console and it says $not defined, then that probably means you forgot to include jQuery library or it was not properly somehow included.
Put the script in the head.
So we're going to, yeah, so let's create our first jQuery together. Close the previous example. And all right, so just create our file and save as jQuery 1. Okay, so for this one, we're going to hide a few elements. So hello. You. Okay. Of course, we have to put it in the body. So in the head is where you can put again the JavaScript can go in the head or in the body. Let's just put it in the head for now. So the first thing we need to do is go grab jQuery from one of the CDNs, and the CDN stands, by the way, for Content Development Network, I think, CDN. So search for jQuery. Actually, let's just search for jQuery and go to the jQuery site, which has a lot of useful documentation. And you can download jQuery from here as well. So I like to use the CDN from Google, but let's just download it so you can look at it. So go ahead and click the download jQuery button here. We're now on version 3, and it's going to be a zip file. And then you can also, you're going to see that you're given an option between the compressed or uncompressed version. So the difference is that the compressed version is not really, is what is called minimized, and it's just though all the white space has been removed. Right now, I actually wanted us to look at it, so I'm going to say, let's say download the uncompressed version, and then save link as, oh, it's not a zip file, okay? And then put it on the desktop. And this way we can just look at it. I right-clicked on it. If you just click on it, it's probably going to open. Okay, so you should have a jQuery 3x there, and then you can use Notepad or Notepad++ or brackets to just open it so we can just take a look. And the reason I want us to take a look is because I want us to appreciate that we don't have to write any of this code, we just get to use it. So as you can see, it's you know, it's long and it's powerful. And we just get to use the methods defined here in our code. So this is the uncompressed version. And if we downloaded the compressed version, so right click Save As. If I look at so first of all, how can you tell by the names? The way you can tell is that the compressed version has those minified rather, not minimized, minified in the name. So this tells us that it's a minified file. And if we open it, it's going to look something like this, not really meant for humans to read, but meant to be compressed in size by removing the white space. So if you're distributing with not from a CDN, but by including the jQuery, you want to include the minified version because it's smaller, right? The only reason you might want to have this version of work is if we actually need to do something with the code, but I just wanted to show it to you. Okay, so I prefer the CDN. Some developers like to have total control, so they like to have the file and they carry it with them. But let's take a look how would you get it from a CDN. So jQuery and Google hosted libraries. And this is not the only place that hosts jQuery, there are other places as well. Sometimes students ask if it's going to take longer because it's going to the Google server. No, first of all, Google has servers everywhere, and also if you get it if you go to their site once, usually it gets cached. So there is no performance issue with using the CDN in case you want them. Okay, so Google hosted libraries. And Google hosts many libraries such as Angular, and here is jQuery. And as you can see now in the 3rd edition, this is actually new, relatively new. Okay, so if you wanted to include jQuery from a hosted library, all you have to do is copy this script. And then, where is our file? Here we go. And then paste in your program. The one, yeah, you can put it either at the very end or at the top. So we have been doing it at the body, and either way is fine. This is just a very simple example, so I'll leave it here for now. Again, a script, it's just a script, so it can either go in the head or in the body of the document. There we go. Okay. Thank you, QA. Okay, so what I was about to say was that the one thing that makes a difference, though, is that you have to include the jQuery before you add the code that is using it. So if we were adding our code up here, this would not work, but it has to be after, right? So let's add some jQuery here to make these guys, the paragraphs disappear. So the code is going to go in another script tag. And then $ for jQuery. Remember how I just showed you today window.onload that makes sure that all the elements on the page are loaded, right?
Should it be before the HTML?
Okay, so it is in the head, and actually what I'm about to show you is that we're going to call the jQuery version of window onload, which is document.ready function. And this function, generally we're going to put our jQuery always inside this function, and it's going to ensure that the elements on the page have loaded before we start working with them. So the syntax is document.ready function. You note that we end with curly brace, parent, so the parent comes from here, and then a semicolon because this entire thing is considered a statement. So this is the code, or rather the wrapper, I guess, the function which is going to ensure that the HTML page, the HTML elements are loaded. And it's not going to proceed before then. So in this sense, it doesn't matter now that we know about this, where we put it. Okay, and then our jQuery is generally always going to go inside the document ready function. So let's see here. So let's actually add the, let's go in the body of our HTML and also add a button. Hide me. So then we're going to select the button. And then on click, we're going to call an anonymous function. So again, we're closing it with close the parent, close the curly brace, the parent, and the semicolon. And then in here we can say $P, always in quotation marks, dot hide. So this is our first jQuery method, hide. So let's take a look and I'll bring the script back. So as you can see, when we click, maybe, I don't know if you saw this, but if we click on the button hide me, and we have selected the paragraph, so it hid the paragraph, right? And this was what we did here. We can select the H1. So you can select by the element name, which is what we're doing. I suppose we could. So as you can see, we hid here the, if we click on hide me now, it's hiding the hello. And also we can select by ID. So on the H2, if I give it the ID of how are you, then I can select CSS style here by saying how are you. So you have to use the hashtag. And now the H2 was hidden. Now let's say that when I was including here the script, I know I did something and I don't have. So in other words, my include is not really correct, but I don't know this, and I'm trying to run my program, my script, and it's not working. Actually, did it work? It should not work. Maybe I didn't save it. It should not work, so maybe it needs to be saved. I guess the preview is canceling here, so I think sometimes it caches it, so this is why it's working. What I was trying to show you was that if we looked at the console, we should see their message $sign not defined, but it's cached. So this is brackets just caching it, I guess, and it's not doing it. I'll show you the different example. All right. So let's look at the jQuery documentation a little more to see what else is available here. So what we're looking for is the API documentation. And does everyone know what API stands for? Did I ask this? Does anyone know what API stands for? It stands for Application Programming Interface. Okay, and if you take a look here, there is a list of the various methods that are available with jQuery and the documentation with them. So we just used hide. Hide the matched elements. So this is exactly what we did. And so if you look at the documentation, you'll usually discover some more details. For example, there are options. The duration is how many seconds it's going to take to hide it, so it can be timed, so it doesn't happen instantaneously, and some other more advanced options. There is also, let's see, the jQuery cheat sheet. I really like this. It's organized nicely, so I'll post a link to our class, to our week 5 as well. So it's nicely organized because it tells you what are the basics, and then filters you can use, what you can use with CSS and so on, events, effects, Ajax. So we're going to look at all these. It's a different cheat sheet than the one all right, but I'll say, I guess that's good enough to share. Okay, let's take a look at a couple other methods just as a basic example. All right, so if you like, we can just work in the same as always. Actually, save as, let's save as jQuery 2.html, and then we're going to reuse the page, delete what is inside the document ready function. Okay, so this is an example that we need to add a couple of divs to make it work. So keep the button. Okay, just click me. And now we're going to add couple divs, 3 divs. So div, ID of div 1. And I'm going to add some inline style, which generally is not a good practice, but we'll just do it right now for speed. So width is going to equal to 80 pixels. Height, 80 pixels. Display, none. What does this mean when we say display none here in the CSS? Thaddeus? Display none? It will not show up originally when we load the page, that's right. Background color, red. Okay. And we want 2 more. So copy the div 2 more times, and then we'll just make changes to it. The second one is going to have ID of div 2, and the third one ID of div 3. And the only other change we're going to make is to change the color. So red, green, and blue. Like. So just the button should be showing up here. Okay. So 3 divs display none, so they're not showing. And let's go back to the jQuery and the script tag. So we have already included jQuery, so we don't have to do it again. We already have the document ready function. And now we're going to select the button. So the selectors are always in quotation marks. And then we call the anonymous function here and close it. Now we're going to say $, select the first div 1 by the ID, dot, fade in, select the second div, dot, fade in. And now you can see here when you open the parent that there are some arguments that you can pass. They're optional though. The reason we know they're optional is because they're in the square brackets. They always mean these are optional. But the first of the optional arguments is duration. So we're going to say the word slow. And this allows us to customize the duration with which the second div is going to fade in. And then we're going to have select the third div, div 3, dot, fade in. And it turns out that you can also specify the duration as a numeric value in milliseconds. So one second is 1,000 milliseconds. So we're going to make it appear in 4 seconds just so we can see it's going to be very slow just for drama, for effect. And then let's try this out and see what happens. So fade in obviously is another jQuery method. Where is the third one? I guess I have, let's see here. Let's see here, div3, did we not give it an ID? Oh, we did.
Yeah, you did back.
I didn't, oh, I see, okay. All right, so try it again. And that is fading in. Yeah, I did. They're not relevant to this example. So let's take a look at now and see what is the default. First of all, you can see that the first one shows up. Essentially, it's not exactly immediately, but let's look at the default, another documentation for the fade in. So I'm going to search here fade in. Display the matched elements by fading them to opaque. So that's what we're using. Yours does not work?
Mine's not.
So the default, by the way, is 0.4 400 milliseconds, which is 0.4 seconds. So it's about half a second.
You also
You
need
close
to
the-
pound signs.
Oh,
yeah.
For IDs, okay, yeah, I was thinking about
No.
the ID.
But also, I think you have to close your div here as I do. In my comment.
No, it's fine.
Okay. And just, I guess.
This document.
All right. So the default behavior is that it fades in at 400, so 0.4 seconds, and then it can have some other values. Let's see here. This one shows the values for the slow and what they map to. So they have mapped here are the values. So fade in is going to fade in as we learn. The speed is, which is an optional, is going to specify the fading effect. Milliseconds, slow or fast. You can also pass as a second optional argument the easing. So this is going to describe how does the element enter the page. So it can be either a swing, which moves slower at the beginning and then faster, or linear, which is with a constant speed. So we can go back. So first of all, I'm going to change the second one from slow to 2000 milliseconds. So hopefully you can see this better. And then I'm going to say, comma, swing. And let's see if we notice a difference here. Okay, so did you see how they faded in now at a different rate, right? The swing describes the path, the motion path, so it's really hard to see here, but it's supposed to start slow and then speed up, whereas linear is the constant.
Okay.
But we just can't really see this very well here.
Go from fast to slow to fast.
Maybe we can try that. The swing is going to move slower at the beginning and then faster in the middle. So we can make, I guess, try making this 6,000 for the last one. It's a little hard to see still, but let's see here. Okay, I have one more example for us. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay, so take another minute to get this, I guess, working or play with it if you like, and then we're going to do one more example.
Mine's not recognizing the dollar sign.
So it means that you haven't included your library. But is recognizing jQuery?
Yeah, it recognizes jQuery and fade in method, but doesn't, when I do the dollar sign, I do .f or whatever to get pull that up.
I've never seen this before. I'm going to, we should not do this.
I can't do it.
Okay, do you get any errors? So can you, let's look at the console real quick. Okay, so click it to see it, please.
Click this.
Yeah. So you have an error. Slow is not defined. Okay, so you have to put, so slow is a string.
Okay. Put it in.
And so, yeah, those words, so essentially the words slow or fast are just strings mapped onto the numbers that are defined to be. And that's why I'm using the quotation marks. So let's do one more example. You can save as, I guess. Again, save as jQuery 3. And again, let's clean up the file here. So we're going to reuse documentary function, but delete the code inside. And also delete those divs. And we're going to add instead, let's do something else. Let's add an ID to the button. Button 1. And then H2 my list. And then we're going to add a UL with the ID of my list. And then inside the list, create some kind of list. Maybe a shopping list again, so kale, rice, food. Bread. Okay, so now let's go to the script. And we're going to write ourselves a little function here. It's going to be called show and hide. Let's check if the list is visible. So if dollar sign, dollar sign list, my list. So my list, li is visible. Oh yeah, there you go. Thanks. Okay.
So LI is supposed to be within the quotes.
Yeah, so this is a selector where we're saying I want you to select the list items within the element with the ID of my list, which happens to be a UL. So we're saying select the list items in the UL.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So if they're visible, then we're going to say dollar sign, so jQuery, my list, li dot hide. And then dollar sign, so jQuery. Let's see, what did we name our button? Button 1. So select the button 1. .html show. So what we're doing here is, actually you'll see when we run it, but we're changing the display on the button to say show. Else, my list items dot show. And button 1 dot HTML hide. Okay, so this is our custom function, and now we're going to call it within the document ready. So it's going to be dollar sign, select the button 1, dot quick, oops, I keep on forgetting to do this, dot quick, show and hide. So let's take a look here. All right, and now we can show and hide, and note that the text in the button is changing because we use the .html to set the different text there. So this is what we expect it to do. And go ahead and make sure yours works. And let me know if you have any questions. So this is exactly, or not exactly, but we just did events in JavaScript, and here is the same structure with the jQuery, right? What's so funny? So those methods, okay, well, that's the kind of thing we talk about. So for example, one way to answer the question is that these methods, the hide, the ones that, so do you see the different coloring in the page? Do you see the purple? the items in purple. So these are the methods here that are purple in color. They are part of where? Where do they come from? Where do they come from?
DOM. The DOM,
From DOM, but yes, they do work with the DOM, but
text and attributes.
they're coming from the jQuery library. Is what I was going to say.
Oh,
Yeah, so they come from the jQuery library, so they're available to us to just use. And how do we know that they're there? Well, you'd have to go to the documentation that I just showed you, and you can research here, you know, the entire list, and you can see the various methods that are available with jQuery. Right? So the API documentation is to tell you what you can do with jQuery. And then, well, let's I guess explain it since it's not clear. Are you clear on the HTML? Everyone is clear on the HTML, right? Okay. So what are we doing on lines 6 to 9? What is this accomplishing? Maybe we need to comment it out. Maybe that's what we need to do. Let's add some comments. All right. So the documentator is going to make sure the page is loaded. So the elements on the page get loaded. That's what documentator does. And then what does the next line do? Select $sign. What is the $sign again?
jQuery.
Okay. And what are we doing when we say hashtag button1? We are selecting the element, the HTML element with the ID of button1. So if we look in the HTML, this happens to be this button here. So we're saying select me the element with button1. And what does it mean when we say .click? Yeah, it's a method. And what else did we call it actually? We just learned this last time. Right? It's an event, the click event. So on the click event, so select me the button, and when there is a click event on the button, I want you to execute the function with the name show and hide. So this is what this line does. So select the element with ID of button1, and on a click event on this element, execute the show and hide function.
Doesn't see show and hide until the next line.
Well, it's not about seeing it. So what is happening is that this is where we have defined the function. And maybe one thing I haven't told you is that when JavaScript interpreter is ready to, execute the statements, it doesn't matter if you put the function before or after. It's going to already know that it's there when the program runs. So
already read everything.
So it first reads everything. So that's why even though it's after, it's still going to know that the function is there. And so the rest of the JavaScript or the jQuery here is going to do what? What is this? What does this do? Well, these are the details inside, but what is the whole snippet here, 15 to 24?
Switching up what the button says, depending on whether it's already shown.
Right, this is inside, but right now what I was trying to get was at is that we declare the show and hide function. So we declare the function here. And again, it's still going to be visible on the click because JavaScript is going to know everything before it actually starts executing. And now here, we're going to check if the list is visible, right? The list items rather. So here is a new method we haven't used yet, is. I think okay, so this method checks if one of the selected elements matches the selector element. Is this clear? No? So it's going to check if read this again. If the checks if one of the selected elements matches the selector element. What is our selected element? The list items, right? So this is a pseudo selector. So this is a CSS. If you don't understand this, this is because you didn't learn it in Web 1.10. It's nothing to do with JavaScript, just to clarify things. But this is a selector that selects all the list items inside UL, in this case, with ID of my list. So no, is visible is also a CSS selector. So selector. Actually, I'm sorry. No, you're right. It's not. It is a CSS style, but it is part of the jQuery language. But what it does is it's going to select every element that is currently visible, right?
Yeah, I was just wondering because we never said it. And also I'm wondering why it has the semicolon in front of it, but
It's not a semicolon, it's a colon. It's part of the syntax. So this is the syntax. And the syntax tells us we have to have a dollar column in front of it. So it's a selector that checks if certain element is visible. Right? And therefore, this line here is checking if the list items are visible. And if they're visible, then we're going to do two things. We're going to hide them, and we're going to change the button to show, the button name to show. If they're not visible, which is the other possibility, then we're going to show them, and we're going to change the text to hide on the button. So for example, here, show, you can add some other text and then see how it's going to show on the button name. So show yourself or hide yourself. And as you can see here, now it's showing show yourself, hide yourself, right? So that's where that's coming from. .html sets it to that value. Does this make sense? We started out as click me because that's what it is in the HTML, but then we can now change it with jQuery by calling the .html method.
Are .hide and .show methods?
They are.
They have to
So
have the
you-
parentheses.
They are methods because they have the parentheses, and also your other clue is that they are purple, unlike our custom function. So because they're purple, this gives us a clue that they're some kind of special, something that's available to us as we're using jQuery. And let's look up hide and show methods as well. So hide jQuery. Show. You can hide and show HTML elements with the hide and show methods, right? So they are available from the language. All the purple are available from all the purple color methods are available from jQuery. Then these are your HTML element IDs, and then
So, I'm sorry, so the HTML thing is not really a method, it's a way to show something in the HTML.
the .html.
Yeah,
It is a method, but it's a method that changes the HTML.
you're allowed.
It's just the name is kind of not greatly selected. So HTML method jQuery. The HTML method sets or returns the content of the selected element. So essentially, it's working on the inner HTML, right? And the inner HTML of what is the inner HTML of this line 31 here? Click me. That's right. So that's what we are changing. We are setting it with .html. So in JavaScript, we were using the inner HTML property. And now, as I mentioned, we're learning the jQuery way. And in this case, is .html. Okay? Did this help, Nico?
Would the results be the same if you went to just that my list instead of my list li? Is my list referring to the whole list?
On which line?
Oh, so line 19, like every time you mention my list li,
Okay.
would it be the same if you just had it my list?
Well,
Because my list is only LIs.
my list is going to refer to the UL. So I think you have to specify the containing elements as well. Let's take a look here. So let's see, I removed it for the hide. Yeah, so it doesn't quite work the same because it's referring to the UL but not the children inside it. So that doesn't seem to do the same.
So on li from minus like all of minus li, and it seems like it's working.
You took this out?
No, li, only li.
Huh.
But from like
From
see,
all-
there are like 3 minus
Right.
li's.
Yeah, so you can select it with the ID of the parent element, but it's still better to specify the list items as well because it's more clear what you're referring to. So even though this workout, still keep them, right? So do you want to do one more example or do you want me to let you play around a little bit? One more example? Let's see if we can get something in. See here. All right, I have a very quick one actually. So let's do this. So save as jQuery 4. That's a quick one. And then delete everything inside the document ready. Delete all your script. Yeah. So again, to be clear, we're always going to want to use document ready because we always want to make sure that our page elements get loaded before we start working with them. So it's a good practice to always put our jQuery.
If we get the jQuery in the footer, would you be able to leave that out?
Possibly. Yeah. You really want to put your jQuery in the footer? Go ahead. You seem to keep on asking about it. So. Go ahead and do it. Don't let me stop you. All right. So So let's see here. We have a list. We can probably work with the same. So let's select our button one. Click function. And let's select our, what is it, my list item dot. And so here is this method. I'm not sure if it's available in jQuery 3, so it might not work, but if it works, you're going to like it. So let's try this. It's not working. No. Oh no, this is just something else. I was rushing here, and what did I? Okay, so this is the toggle method, and it does the same thing as what we just did, except it turns out that don't be mad at me, but jQuery actually has a method that does what we just did. It's called toggle, and so you can just this one method, you can toggle any element to show and hide. So that's what it means. And if we have a paragraph or whatever, any kind of element, you can toggle it with a toggle method.
So that would have been quicker.
Right. But it's a good exercise what we did, but this is a very quick way to do this. And so I guess the last thing I would like to say today is that I think one of the things about jQuery is there's a different kind of knowledge that it's not really even almost, it is a programming language, but you have to know what is available more than know how to write code properly. So it's a little different. It's more shallow, but it's more wide. So that's, as you can see here with toggle, you can do the same thing a lot easier. And I think we'll leave it here for today. You can play with your examples a little more if you like, and continue on Tuesday, and I will extend the biocalculator homework to Thursday. So what are your initial impressions from jQuery?
Easy.
Easy? It is pretty easy. What do you say?
Easier.
Easier. That's question. Let me know the recording after. Okay?